how that video done that I uploaded the other day. Hello everyone, my name is James and I really did not expect that last video to do as well as it did. The engagement I've had over the last week with that video has been absolutely insane for me. Like, it's been quite surreal, so I'm very, very grateful for everybody that has watched that video, liked and given feedback. I really do appreciate it. It's not like I went viral or anything, but I have been uploading on this channel since about 2009 with varying levels of success over quite a few different directions, and I really wasn't sure where I was going to take this channel this year. Currently, the plan is that the channel is about my life and what I find interesting, and it just so happens that right now Warhammer is sort of what's piquing my interest, so I should probably just let you know that you should be aware that there will be some non-mini content coming in the future, because I do have plans for other videos. But if you keep watching, enjoying and engaging with this content, then I guess this is what I do now. Right, with that small talk out of the way, let's talk about the next mini. Following on from the last video, I did mention that I had a lot of Lord of the Rings minis. All of this stuff was painted when I was about 13 years old. So yeah, that was about 2003. I want to see if I can do a better job as an aging grumpy bastard, because I kind of want to be able to say that I can officially do something better now than I could when I was younger. Because quite frankly, I could do a lot of shit back then that I can't do now because I'm just chunky and unfit. So I need this win. This is a soldier, a warrior. This is some dude from Minas Tirith that I painted when I was 13 years old. It's the best one that I could find from my pre-existing collection, and I know what you're thinking. How is that the best one you could find? And let me just show you another one as an example. So yeah, it's pretty safe to say that I was consistently bad when I painted these. But you know, I was still consistent. That's something, right? Before I painted this model, I actually sat down and tried to do something that I've never really done before, and that's plan ahead. In the last video, I just sat down and painted however I really felt like. I didn't follow any guide, I just painted what felt right at the time. Yeah, I didn't think any of the steps through, and it didn't necessarily make for a great end result. I mean, it was okay, it wasn't great. In addition with that, the get starting box that I bought did not really have enough paints for me to complete this model in the way that I wanted. So I thought, hey, let's make a shopping list. So this is what a soldier, warrior, this is what the dude looks like in the films. You can see their cloth is quite dark, mostly black in fact, but painting it this way wouldn't look very good, so I wanted to emphasize its clothiness, or I don't know, there's a way you can paint grey and dark things, so I wanted to try that. Instead of mixing my own grey colour, I thought it would be best that this would be the first new paint that I'll need to add. Moving on to the scabbard, we can see it looks quite leathery, so it only makes sense to get some brown paint to fill in here. Then we also have the face, which is of course very, very fleshy, because you know, face. It has quite a few layers to it, and I already have a Bugman's Glow, which is a good starting point, but I would like a lighter flesh tone to do some highlights, so I added this to my shopping list as well. Now this model does have a lot of armor that needs to be shaded properly, and Agrax can only get me so far, so I also think I need to add a nice black wash in there. All in all, the paints I picked up are Eshin Grey and a dry Dawnstone for the cloth, a Rhinox or Rhinox hide, and a dry Golgfag? Golgfag? What? How the fuck do you say that? Golgfag. Such a weird name. Brown for the leather and hair. Cadian Flesh Tone is the paint I picked up for the face highlights, and the ever popular Nuln Oil is the black wash. I also took my own advice and got this nice grey primer from the Army Painter. I did think about getting a white prime as well, so I can maybe try some Zenithal stuff, but considering this guy was mostly metallic and I didn't really want to spend more money than I had to on new things, I decided to just stick with the one. Something else I noticed during my last hobby session was that the way you hold the model is really important and can affect a lot of things and how your brushwork turns out. When I blue tacked the thing to a pot lid, it really did make a whole world of difference having the extra chunk at the bottom to hold on to. Now there is an official model holder that I could buy, but as I've said before, crippling debt. Don't want to spend more money than I have to. So I popped on over to Thingiverse and found this super simple model holder, set it to print, and then I just blue tacked the dude to the top of it. Super easy, super effective. With that thing set to print and taking up the rest of my afternoon, I decided to clean up the model, starting with the extra sprue bits that were hanging on. I clipped those off with my clippers and oh fuck, those things really fly off, don't they? Need to find them now before my cat does. It was then time to clean up the Mini, and I can safely say that this is the least fun step of the process so far. Spotting every single defect is not as easy as some of the videos make it look, and quite often things just slip through. You might think it's part of the armor, sometimes it's a clear mold line or whatever, but like at the end of the day I just said fuck it, it's good enough. And I missed a few things that kind of make it not good enough, but meh, what's done is done. After gluing the Mini to the base, I popped outside and gave it a nice coat of grey primer. I just plonked the thing on a piece of wood I had lying around, so why spend good money on Games Workshop stuff when you can just use a plank of wood? Now, I just want to interject and talk about something technical for the time being. My last video was mostly an exercise in editing and storytelling. I prioritized that above everything else because I'm still really trying to find my feet when it comes to making non-gaming content. As a result, the video footage wasn't really the best. The GoPro Hero 8 was just easy to clamp to my desk and record, but it has a very hard time trying to record at the macro scale. My Sony WX500, which I'm recording on right now, also struggles with this. Just the focal distance is just too long. I do have a GoPro Hero 4, but that suffers from the same problem. So I'm in this conundrum where I need to record macro scale things, but I don't have the camera to do it. Oh shit! Now, I've never really thought about using a phone for serious photography. Like, I know it has a lot of power in it and it's the Galaxy S22 Ultra. It was mostly advertised as being like a really camera focused thing. But even so, I never really considered it as a serious tool for making videos. And then it hit me. This thing literally has a macro mode built into the camera. The last video had, I think I zoomed in 2 times and the stabilization was crap and the quality was crap, and that was why it was shaking all over the place. So yeah, this week I decided to try and use this to record most of the footage going forwards. Again, this is mostly an experiment in photography to see if I can find a good workflow for me for this style. So please bear with me whilst I try and make these videos not shit. Anyways, back to the video. Once it was dry from the primer, I blocked in all the base colors. With the armor covering so much of the Mini, it was a pretty easy and actually like quite an enjoyable job. I based the underside of the Mini with Abaddon black because, well, it's obvious, isn't it? The cloth was based in Eshin grey. The armor and metallics are in Lead Belcher. And the face in Bugman's Glow. The leather was also done in Rhinox hide. Now, I found that the Rhinox hide brown was a bit dark for what I had really imagined in my head, I hope that the dry brush will later on will solve that issue, but live and learn. I've got a dark brown paint now. After that, I painted the black bits, such as the feet and the shield, and this also helped clean up any other areas that I wasn't sure of or where the detail was too fine for Games Workshop to justify overcomplicating the model. As an example, this is the side of the shield, which is just a random mass of plastic. I also based the hair black because I wanted to work my way up the browns. Finally, I used Retributor Gold to adorn the pommel and the guard of the sword. On my back. Where's the brass? I did think about using a brass colour, but the only one I had was Rune Lord Brass, and I found this to be a bit dark for my lighting. So I went with this brilliant gold colour instead, which can be dulled down with a wash later. Next, I ran a shade of Agrax along all of the brown areas as well as the face. This really helped with the separation of the belt around the armour, and it also gave it some nice natural browniness and reflections against the breastplate, which I thought was pretty cool. And since we are on the topic of shading, I shaded the rest of the model with that classic, and I'm assuming it's classic because I've only watched other people's videos, but that classic Nuln Oil. This really did most of the work for the armour, which was a really big win for me. It gave the plates an amazing separation with absolutely minimal effort, and something past James didn't really do on his models. Now at this point everything did seem quite a bit dull and a bit too grimdark, so I tried dry brushing the Golgfag Brown. I can't say that seriously. Golgfag Brown. I tried dry brushing the Golgfag Brown over the scabbard and the other leather bits, but I found that it was just too bright of a tone to go against the darkness of the Rhinox hide. Maybe it was because it was too wet, but I ended up dabbing most of it off and just conceded that the brown is going to be quite dark here, and it was the same situation with the hair. It looks like I'll be buying a new paint in the future. Next, it was time to tackle the very intricate details on the shield. Apart from the face, I think this would be the most difficult part of the model. I started by giving it a dry brush of Corax White. This caught the raised areas of the shield quite nicely, and it also gave it a bit of a worn look sort of around the bits as a side effect of the dry brushing, and it's something out of my control, but I think it worked out quite well. I followed this up with a thicker layer of Corax White and tried to use the side of my brush in order to make it easier to catch those raised edges. All in all, I genuinely think I did a good job. Now, let's tackle the cloth. This was actually pretty simple. I gave the whole area a nice dry brush of Dawnstone, which gave it a good worn sort of look. I thought about trying glazing at this point, but it's a technique that I'll save for another day. I have too much to learn in this hobby, so I really need to take it one step at a time. Once I was happy with the dry brush, I gave it a quick wash of Nuln Oil again, mostly in the recesses to give it that nice shaded, folded look. Is that right? I don't know, it just worked. Moving on to the armor panels of the model, I tried a bit of edge highlighting with Runefang Silver. Afterwards, I thought I would try this weird technique of doing an almost shine of a wash, if that makes sense. I diluted some of the Runefang Silver with a lot of water and just washed it over the top of the large breastplate areas, but this didn't really turn out as I wanted it to, so I dabbed as much of that off as I could, went back over the areas with Lead Belcher, and then gave it a wash in Nuln Oil again. We then come onto the face. I highlighted as much as I could with Cadian Flesh Tone before throwing another wash of Agrax over the chin. I finished up with Nuln Oil in the eye sockets because I don't really have as much dexterity as I would like at the moment, and I just did not want to try doing excessive face painting at the moment. I'm just not ready for it. I found this out last week when I tried to do the eyes of the Space Marine. Just don't have the talent just yet. For now, doing some base paints, a bit of highlighting, and some washes in the face left it with a perfectly acceptable result. If he was a captain or a named unit, maybe I would have put some more effort in, but He's not. And with that step complete, I decided to call it a day on that model. After about 2 hours of painting time at the desk, it certainly was an improvement over the 6 hours of my last model, but at the end of it all, I achieved this. Now, I feel a bit better about this model, and granted it's not as complicated as the Marine I did in the last video, but put him next to the other two models from my youth and there's just a whole world of difference. There is so much more detail in the armor, and especially on the shield and in the face, that really are the main focal points of the model. When you look at this, like the first thing you really see is that shield. And if you compare the two, like, this has detail, the other one doesn't. If I had more paints and probably willpower, I would have carried on trying to improve this guy, but again, he's just a dude. Like, there's absolutely no reason to go completely overboard for just dude number one. So at the end of it all, I think I managed to paint a perfectly acceptable Warrior of Minas Tirith. So to answer the question at the start of the video, am I better than a 13-year-old at painting? I mean, at least I'm better than this 13-year-old who was also me, so yes. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch it, even though I'm really still trying to find my way in this sort of hobby space. I do have a bunch more content planned for the future, so I'll try to keep to a weekly schedule, but again, that's quite difficult. I do have a job to get done and whatnot. So with that being said, hopefully I will see you next week.